It is the price we pay for love. I thought it appropriate to use a quote from Queen Elizabeth to initiate my thoughts this morning. Grief is the price we pay for love. This was Her Majesty's message to New York and the U.S. after 9/11. Perhaps it's her message to her country now and to the world, as we will be remembering a world leader who modeled dignity, service, great composure, and love. Grief is the price we pay for love. The gospel reading today, Jesus directs our attention to loss. The lost sheep and the lost coin both represent loss and therefore grief. He models something incredible, quite amazing. He is the target of extreme prejudice. The judgment and disgust being offered him could have made him dismissive, argumentative, even angry. But look at what he chooses to do. He tells stories. Stories filled with compassion. He offers his critical audience the compassion he offers those these critics have labeled as sinners. Stories have a way to open us up, calm us down, bring us together by shedding light on our humanity. He tells them a story that might catalyze what the Buddhists refer to as deep looking. We might call it prayer or contemplation or reflection. And Jesus offers his critics a story that stirs compassion. Remember when you lost something? When you experienced loss? The storytelling itself is an act of compassion, an invitation to all listening to consider what it's like to lose something, to consider what it is we have lost, and to have compassion on ourselves. By showing compassion, he gives us permission to have a little compassion for ourselves. The temptation might be to see the lost sheep or the lost coin as an economic resource. But what if the lost coin is a painful part of our story that we think we cannot bear? And so we've let it go. We've let it wander off. What if the lost coin and the lost sheep represent grief? What if grief is that pearl of great price that Jesus later refers to, that you would go and sell everything to purchase the land that it is on? What if the primal problem of humanity is that it has buried its grief, lost its grief? Not finding our grief as a nation can lead to war, to reaction. Not finding our grief as citizens leads to division, racism, sexism, homophobia, judgmentalism, dismissiveness, and every kind of unhappiness. Not finding our grief as individuals leads to depression, numbness, addiction, or a compulsive hunger to consume or win or elevate ourselves over others. When was the last time you cried? When was the last time you had the courage to welcome grief into the depths of your heart? It's only logical. If you fear grief, you will also fear love. If you fear love, you will fear God. If you fear God, you cannot find joy or peace or true happiness. If If you do not go looking for the lost coin of your grief, you will not find what you truly long for. If you do not drop what you are doing with the herd of things around you and pursue the lost grief that has wandered off, you will not be able to embrace life. In our mindfulness gathering on Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. here, all are welcome. We recently read and meditated on a reading from Thich Nhat Hanh that blew us away. He said, "I cannot live in a world without suffering, because suffering is the source of compassion. Without suffering, there is no compassion. And without compassion, there is no life, no joy, no happiness. And compassion starts with us. If you cannot have compassion for yourself, how will you ever have compassion for others? And to have compassion on yourself, you have to pay attention to your grief, which is the sheep that wandered off, or the coin that you're missing. Doing this kind of work on yourself transforms sympathy into empathy. None of us need sympathy. How many people like sympathy? I know I don't like sympathy. It does nothing for me. In a way, it offends me. We need empathy, presence to each other, which is only possible if we are present to ourselves. You ask, how do we have compassion for ourselves? First of all, acknowledge that you are suffering in some way right now. You are suffering. It's hard to go there. We would rather not, because it scares us. It is painful. But we need to go there. We need to welcome grief and say to your deepest feelings, I am here for you. I am not rejecting you. I embrace all of my deepest self, all of my deepest feelings. And to know that God is there for you. To know that God and your true self are waiting for you to find your grief. That's the way forward and through your journey. I love what the psalm says today in verse 7. For behold, you look for deep truth within me, and will make me understand wisdom secretly. Know that by welcoming your deepest feelings, exploring what those feelings mean and what they might reveal can lead you to your healing. It is what leads you to your healing, and ultimately to compassion and joy and happiness. And people still ask me about what I like to refer to as my imprisonment in an Italian COVID hospital. If I'm honest, I will say it was terrifying, actually. I didn't admit it at the time. It's no fun to think you're fine and to be tested positive at an airport in Italy, and suddenly have a policeman come up to you and said, you must come with me. Tell your wife you cannot come and you cannot visit him. You must go. We were not prepared for that. And to be taken off in an ambulance to the wing of a hospital that was surrounded by tall fences and barbed wire and police, where no one spoke your language. No one would tell you, where are you going? Why are you here? What is the process? How long will you be here? And directed to a room that had a mattress, a thin mattress covered in plastic, very little ventilation, and nothing to do, so to speak. And I could complain about the food and just the austere place that I was in, but I found myself saying, who are you to complain? Isn't that what we do? Who are you to complain, Scott? People have it much worse. I found my thoughts going to those who have been imprisoned unjustly with no representation. I found my mind thinking of those who were shut-ins and couldn't get out. People who no one seems to be paying attention to. I let it go. I remember my iPhone, which was my only connection to the outside world. The battery was dying and my recharger was frayed. The wires were starting to come out of the end of it. I had to set my iPhone up every night saying, please recharge my battery. Please recharge my battery. It wasn't a fun experience, but why do I now see this experience as a miraculous gift? Which I do. It's because that was not the suffering in my life. I could try to complain about it, but it was nothing compared to what it reminded me of early in my life. A coin I had lost, a sheep that had wandered, a suffering I had endured, actually in a hospital room. And then it occurred to me, that's why this was such a traumatic moment. It was a gift to remind me that I needed to look deep into myself and discover and reconnect with a part of myself I had repressed throughout my entire life. And as I began to do that, compassion for my story started to emerge. Compassion and patience with myself began to emerge. It began to help me reinterpret where I am now, where I was, and perhaps where I will go with my journey. It was thanks to the scriptures, especially the Psalms, in my new form of spirituality that I'm embracing called mindfulness, that helped me through the reflection and the deep looking at that experience in my life. To take a deeper look at what was happening. This world has lost something. We have lost something. What we have lost is our grief. And because we have lost our grief, we have lost love for ourselves, compassion for ourselves. And how can we love our neighbor if we cannot love ourselves? You know, I like to say that. You know, the statement, you shall love your neighbor as you love yourself, is really bad news for our neighbors. Because we do such a lousy job. We're impatient, got reasons. Other people have it worse than I do. What a nice, polite way to shut yourself down, to avoid the pain that you're feeling, the suffering that is present to you. How Thich Nhat Hanh can smile when he says, I cannot live in a world without suffering. Because it stirs compassion, the most beautiful gift that we can share with each other. You have been hard on yourself, admit it. And you have been through so much in this pandemic, among other things. Don't say that other people have it worse. Simply from the truth that you have no idea what other people are going through. Really, do we really? We try to think that some people have it harder than ourselves. We don't know. The point is, that doesn't matter. You are on your own journey, and you need to pay attention to where you're suffering. Let your compassion for yourself arise, because if you don't do that, you will not have the ability to have compassion on me. There you go. It's in my self-interest that you have compassion for yourself. It's in everybody's self-interest that you have compassion for yourself, because that is the font from which flows compassion for all people. That's what creates true community, true justice, true action in the world, true peace. Grief is the price we pay for love. God is love. God is the source of joy and peace and compassion. Go and look for yourself. And take another promise with you that Jesus also made to us. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and the door will be open unto you.